This question comes from Caroline Walker in my Facebook group, and it's a great question actually because I have clients who sell wellbeing workshops to schools or who coach students with study skills. And the challenge that you often face with a non-academic subject is that people don't take it seriously. They see it as a nice to have rather than a must have. And of course, when we're a business and when we're asking people to pay money, they are going to prioritize things that they see as must-haves over nice-to-haves, often, not always, but often. So I'm going to give you a few ideas of how you can turn that around and how you can change that perception. The first thing, and this is something that a couple of my clients do really successfully, is to think about what impact you have on the outcomes that matter to your audience. Now, when I'm saying audience here, I mean the people who are making a decision. So if I'm a tutor for children, then often it's the parents and the guardians who are going to make that decision. If I sell to schools, it's not the students, it's the head teacher or the leaders who are going to make that decision. I'll say that one more time. Think about the outcomes that really matter to those people, to those decision makers. So I'll give you an example of what that client I talked about who sells those wellbeing workshops in schools, what she does that's really successful. One of the things she does is she maps what she does to the outcomes that matter to the school, so the academic outcomes. She talks about how if students are relaxed, if they know how to regulate their emotions, then they are better learners. And of course, if they're better learners, that's going to have a positive impact on the results that they get in exams, which is going to help the school. So think about how you can map what you do to outcomes that matter. What is it that your service unlocks? So another client of mine, she coaches students with study skills. Now, if you think about study skills, they aren't subject specific. So yes, a parent might think, well, I'd rather send my child to an English tutor rather than a study skills tutor. But if she changes that language and says, well, this is going to help all your subjects, this is a lifelong skill, and if she talks about how it can impact exam results, then all of a sudden you're bumping up the value of what you're offering. You're bumping up the value proposition that you're putting forward. Another idea is to think about yourself as a bridge that takes your client from point A to point B. Now, that advice, to be honest, suits every single business. We're all problem solvers. That's the definition of a business. It has to solve a problem. But when you're tutoring a non-academic subject, maybe you need to hone in on this a little bit more. So to take someone from point A to point B, you need to understand what point A means. You really need to understand the position that your students or that your audience are in. So let's have a think. If you're teaching young people, you've got two audience groups. You've got the decision makers, who might be the parents and guardians, and then you've got the students themselves, which is who you're working with. So what matters to those parents and guardians? What might they be feeling about the position their child is in? And what position is their child in? So let's say, for example, that you're targeting disengaged learners. Well, that parent or guardian might be feeling really worried that, how do I motivate my child? I'm really worried that they're hating school or that they're hating learning. Right now, I don't even care about the results. I just want them to feel motivated. I want them to feel confident. There you've built up a picture, and that can steer your language. It can also steer exactly how you deliver what you deliver. So let's say you've got this online course that's got lots of recorded videos that relies on independent learning. Well, if you're working with disengaged learners, there's a mismatch. You know that they aren't going to feel motivated to take that learning. So you have two choices. You either change your target audience or you change your service. But either way, there needs to be this compatibility, and you need to speak to those people and their challenges. So if you were talking to a parent, and I don't mean necessarily literally talking to a parent, this could be through your marketing, through your content, through your website, you might say things like, by the end of this, your child will feel more confident, they will feel happier, they will know how to learn. Or you might say they will know how to find their own way of learning, or they'll know how to dig themselves out when their confidence or their engagement is feeling particularly low. These are the things that those parents want to hear. That's what's going to make them feel relieved and make them feel like We need this. It's no longer a nice to have. We need this. And then a third idea that I'm going to share is think about positioning yourself as a must-have. Think about the other professionals in your industry who are considered must-haves. So let's go back to that example. You sell study skills, you do study skills coaching. Now, your audience might prefer to invest in a maths tutor or an English tutor or a science tutor. What you could do is you could collaborate with them. And let's say I'm an English tutor, so I could interview you, let's say, and I could say, okay, could you give my audience some advice on how to learn loads of quotations in a short space of time? Or I could say, my students, yes, they're revising for English, but they're also revising for loads of other subjects. How do they manage that? And you could provide that advice. Now, we've got a fair exchange going on here, because for me, I am creating video content or audio content, whatever format you prefer. I'm creating content that's going to help my audience, and therefore they're going to pay attention. I'm hosting it on my channels, but also it helps you because it positions you. You're standing alongside someone who your audience views as a must-have, and you are really demonstrating how what you do unlocks success in those core subjects that people prioritize so much. You could even do things like try and be on podcasts and write guest blog posts. All of these things gets you in front of other people's audiences, but they also really boost your credibility, because you can then say to your audience that, check out this podcast episode this podcast that I was a guest on, or, read this blog post that I was invited to write, or that, where you're guesting. It basically boosts your authority and your credibility, which again feeds into changing that perception from you being this nice to have to you being a must have. So I hope those have given you a few ideas. If you have any questions or any further ideas, please do type them in the comments and we can continue the conversation in there.